Good. Thank you for everyone who came out in person. Shelly, you can't see them, but we got a good audience right behind me. Um, so Shelly Brunswick came in last semester. She gave a great talk on career advice in the space industry. She told her story about how she got into the space industry. If you missed that, you can check it out on our YouTube channel. Unfortunately, half of that recording got corrupt, so only the first part of her speaker event last year is on YouTube. So Shelly was kind enough to come back as our first guest speaker at the Space Business Association, and she has an amazing talk prepared for us on global transformational leadership. So let's give it up for Shelly Brunswick. Hold on, we can't hear you, Shelly.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, all
Okay,
good.
perfect. Perfect. So, thank you again. I wanted to just say thank you for inviting me back. That's a good thing. And I'm sorry the original discussion got corrupt, but we can always have some Q&A later today because the first time I came and talked, we really just did a good Q&A, shared a little bit about my journey, which has three big chapters. My first chapter is when I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force right out of high school. And my second chapter is when I became an officer in the Air Force, and that's when I started my space career. And the third chapter is where I am at Space Foundation now as the Chief Operating Officer. And in each of those chapters throughout my journey, I've had some great lessons learned, and I'll be happy to share those with you. But I thought for tonight, you're kicking off the school year, and let's really kind of talk about leadership and what has changed in leadership. And this is something that I've really observed over my 20 plus year career in the space industry is that we really need to look at having global transformational leadership. And that's not saying the leaderships that we've had in the past. You're going to learn about, depending where you are in your college life, you're going to learn about Hershey Blanchard and situational leadership, and you're going to learn about servant leadership. And those are all very applicable in the business environment. But the part I want to share with you tonight is how to be a global transformational leader. And that includes the piece that didn't exist 20, 30, 40 years ago, and that's the social media and the ability to have a global presence. So I'm going to walk you through some of the things I've learned during my journey, and I'm going to share some insights, not only from my journey, but from others I've interviewed. So again, I hope you'll enjoy this, and we'll just jump right into it. So one of the things I've learned during this process is that there are three big traits that global transformational leaders have. They're inspirational, they're authentic, and they have gratitude. They're grateful. And so the first one I'm going to start with is with my good friend, Dr. Timothy Mote, who's the president of Colorado State University Pueblo, Go Pack, and my alma mater. And one day we were having a conversation, and he shared with me that he believes that one of the most important qualities that a leader should possess today is to be inspirational. I mean, think about it. When you go to class, do you want to sit in front of a professor that's not inspirational, that's not motivating you? Or when you watch TV and you're listening to the news and you listen to individuals that aren't really connecting with you because they don't sound like they're connected to what they're saying? So I wanted to highlight the importance of being inspirational and how that will help you in your journey as you become leaders of the future. So we can think of some of these global transformational leaders like Nelson Mandela or Malala Yousafzai. But one of the inspirational leaders I want to share with you is my good friend Machiko Gozen. Now, Machiko is a 13th generation samurai woman, or you could say a samurai warrior, and she is the president of Janet Tea. And I had the pleasure of meeting Machiko at the Dubai Expo 2 years ago in October 2021. And she shared with me how her journey, her purpose in life is to empower women. And we talked about what does that mean? And she included like some of the key takeaways that she has shared from her generational learning from her ancestors. And I think you will find many of these relevant today. And I'm only going to cover a couple of them, and we can talk more about them later if you want. But the first one I'm going to highlight is kindness. We talk about how hard the world can be, and we never know what other people are going through, but we can always be kind. And according to Machiko, the greatest form of strength. So here's a samurai warrior telling me the greatest form of strength is to be kind to someone else. How easy is it when someone is unkind to us to be unkind back, to be mean, to be hurtful? And we don't really know their journey and what they're going through, so you can demonstrate the greatest form of strength by being kind in return. The other big thing I'm going to highlight from Machiko is mindfulness. You know, especially while you're in college and you're looking at all the opportunities that are available, it can become overwhelming. There's so many things you can do and how you can spend your time and groups you can interact with. And so it's really important to ground yourself and be mindful, because your mind will dictate your thoughts and your actions and your words. And it will take you on a journey, and you want it to be a journey you want to go on. So be mindful in where you want to be and how you want to focus your time and energy, the people you want to be with, and the outcomes you want to have. And I had a protege share this with me as well. She was very mindful about the mentors she selected. She wanted to select mentors who not only could help her in her journey, but also shared her same values, because she felt that would help her in her journey to accomplish the things she wanted in a mindful way. So I'm going to just say from Machiko, the two big takeaways from this slide is about being kind, even when others are unkind to you. We don't know what other people are going through. And to be mindful, because all roads will take you somewhere, but it may not be where you want to be. You need to be mindful about your journey. So of course, this is Space Business Association, and I'm a space leader. So I need to highlight an amazing space leader as we talk about inspirational. And so I want to talk about Kay Wang. She is the co-founder of the Carmen Project. So if you don't know much about the Carmen Project, you should check them out. They do offer fellowships and scholarships, so it's a great organization. And Kay is also the CEO at Disrupt Space and an Oxford Fellow. So what she shared with me is, to be a global transformational leader and to be inspirational, you also need to develop a global mindset, because you need to understand different cultures, different history, politics, and you need to be able to connect with people where they are. Because again, we all want to come together and communicate. And part of that means you need to have that global mindset and understand how others are coming to the table to have that dialogue, what their backgrounds are and their journeys, so that you can have an open discussion. The other thing that I loved about Kay is that she says we need to be action driven. You know, how many times we have great visionaries out there, we have great thought leaders, but they're great at thinking and maybe not so much of doing. So it's important to be that inspirational leader who can not only think of the vision and where we want to go, but you also can accomplish it and get it done. So two great takeaways from Kay: that global mindset and be action driven. So as we think about that inspirational leader, you can think of some of those skill sets that you can focus on in your journey while you're learning about becoming a space leader. You know, again, we want to be visionary. You need to inspire the vision. Where do you want to be 3, 5, 10 years? And how do you communicate that with others? How do you inspire them to follow your passion? And having a positive attitude, because you will have setbacks, you will have failures, and that's okay. How do you keep moving forward? And how do you motivate your team to be positive, even when it may be bleak? And again, developing those good communication skills and being passionate. You know, who wants to sit and watch somebody talk, but you don't feel their energy or their passion or their enthusiasm? They're not really connected to what they're saying. So these are some great traits you can develop as you think about your leadership and how you want to be inspirational. And so as we leave this trait of inspirational leadership, I wanted to leave you with Steve Jobs saying that the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And I bet you're sitting in this room right now or listening to us via Zoom. So that next key trait that a global transformational leadership leader has is authenticity. They're authentic. You know that when they connect to you, they mean what they say, that you have trust and rapport with them. And this is a picture of one of my great mentors, Chuck Harris. He was a former boss I had when I was in the US Air Force. And he talked to me about authentic leadership. And he always would say to me, Shelli, You are who you are. It's in your DNA. It's who you are. So when you think about bringing yourself to a meeting or to something you're passionate about, think about it. This is who you are. It's part of your DNA. It's part of your makeup. And no matter where you go, this is you. This is your leadership. This is the person you are. And people are going to connect with that authenticity, especially to now on social media. People can quickly tell when someone is disingenuous, right? When they're not authentic, when they're just hitting talking points, but they don't really mean what they say. And another great leader I want to highlight is Dr. Ingrid Vasilio-Feltes, and she's with the World Business Angels Investment Forum, and she leads their Global Science, Technology, and Innovation Committee. And she also talked about that leadership is encoded in our DNA, right? Intertwined with every strand of our being. You know, sometimes you meet people and you just know they're somebody you want to follow. You know, they've got the message that brings you to them and that they mean what they say and they're going to do what they said they're going to do. So again, a couple people you may know or not know that are authentic leaders, Anna Rudolowski, she created Women in Tech. So if you have any women in the room tonight, they have an amazing program. Women Tech Network is what it's called, Women Tech Network. And they have programs, they have awards, they also have a mentoring program. And even though it says Women in Tech, it's open to men and women. So you could be proteges and you could be mentors. And of course, Greta Thunberg started a climate change movement when she was like 13 years old. And so again, she was very authentic in her message and how it was so important because for those of us who are in my generation, the earth doesn't belong to me. I'm borrowing it from the next generation, right? So it's important that we take care of the planet we live on. And that was Greta's message. And a couple more authentic leaders. One of my favorites is Jane Goodall. I'm very much about Africa and wildlife and nature. And, she really has an authentic message about hope, that we must hope that we can correct the climate damage we have and save species and wildlife. And that's a very authentic message for her. And of course, many of you are familiar with Melinda Gates and the Gates Foundation. So one of the authentic leaders I want to share with you is my good friend, Linda Mathis. She's the former CEO of the American Red Cross in the National Capital Region or Washington, D.C. area. And just a couple takeaways from Linda that I want to highlight is how she says that, to be that leader, you need to become a person that likes new challenges, right? Because in leadership, it's never a dull day. Admiral McRaven once said, the only easy day, this is a Navy SEAL saying, the only easy day was yesterday. So become a person that likes new challenges if you want to be a leader. Embrace that, be authentic about it, that every day you go into the office or wherever, school or your business, that it's going to be a new challenge. And sometimes challenges look like problems, but keep that in mind, be positive. And then she also highlighted the need to develop strong business skills. So this is a perfect group, because you're looking at business and space in that intersection of entrepreneurship. And so develop strong business skills are going to help you through these difficult situations. And obviously, as you can imagine, the American Red Cross, they deal with a lot of situations. It's not only hurricanes and national disasters, but it's also about fundraising, right? It's also about you have to raise money in order to do the mission you want to do. So remember, develop those good business skills. And those include good communication skills, right? Being authentic, connecting with donors, getting them to be passionate about the mission you're doing. And again, I don't want to leave you without an amazing, authentic space leader. Again, another great friend, Gabriella Goddard. She is a Kiwi, which means she's from New Zealand, but she lives in the UK now. And what she highlighted is the key to authenticity is integrity, because integrity builds trust. And that Kiwis have a heritage of being quite direct. So she says what she means and she does what she says, and that builds trust. And so remember that as you're building relationships, when you make commitments, when you say things, you've got to follow through on those commitments because that builds trust. And ultimately, your careers are going to be built on relationships. The job I have even today, the COO of Space Foundation, I didn't find this on a job board. What happened is when I was retiring out of Washington, D.C., somebody knew I was retiring from the Air Force and they sent me this job announcement. Otherwise, I would have never known this. So again, you need to build those relationships, and they're built on that foundation of trust. So these are some of the skills that being an authentic leader has. Remember, it's in your DNA. It's who you are as a person. You're bringing that leadership in every second of the day. It's about building that trust, that integrity, saying what you're going to do, doing what you're going to say, being reliable, being transparent with others. And if you want to learn more about authentic leadership, one of my good friends, Peter Hugh, who is also part of the World Business Angels Investment Forum, we collaborated on an article this past spring on authentic leadership, and it was published by the Bead Society Review. So if you want to check it out, I have it on the screen. You can capture it with your phone and go check it out. And we highlighted more about authentic leadership. And we'll kind of close on this skill with Howard Schultz. You know, you have to be authentic. You have to be true, and you have to believe in your heart that this is going to work. And so this is anything you do in life, your college program, creating a business, being in a relationship. You have to connect with that with your heart. And again, it ties in with being that inspirational leader. These three traits that I'm highlighting tonight, being inspirational, being authentic, and being grateful, are all interconnected, which leads me to gratitude, being a grateful leader. So again, I have a great picture of one of my wonderful mentors and role models, Major General Al Flowers, who was the longest serving airman in the United States Air Force history. You can check it out. He has a book out that talks about servant leadership. And his parents were migrant farmers. And so he started as a migrant farmer and became an enlisted airman and ultimately a two-star general. And then he wrote a book. And in his book, he covers things he calls flowerisms. And the one that I really connect with for this one on gratitude is this one on heart. You know, humility, enthusiasm, attitude, respect, and trust. But really, that first one, be humble. You know, when we're being a leader and we're being a servant leader and we're demonstrating gratitude and we're wanting to pay it forward, it's about being a humble leader. And it's not about you, but it's about helping others. And we can see some of those global leaders that are grateful around the world. You know, the former New Zealand Prime Minister, you know, is a leader with gratitude. I also then want to highlight another amazing leader and a role model for me is Dr. Harbin Aurora Ray. She is the creator of several organizations. One of them is the G100, which I am a member of. And the G100 is a global organization that is designed to create gender parity by 2030. And I lead the global space technology, innovation, and aviation wing. So it has 100 wings around the world with 100 country members in each wing. And so it's a great connecting, unifying organization. And again, this is just one of the many organizations she's created because she believes in the power of gratitude and paying it forward. So just a couple key takeaways that I learned from Harbin was that being grateful is not just something you want to demonstrate as a leader, that it's really essential for your personal and professional growth. It's part of your key to happiness is being positive and being grateful. You know, one of the things we sometimes think about is when we have a bad day and we come home at night and we're frustrated and we don't think the world was fair. You know, what Harbin highlighted is you should create a gratitude journal and call it the thank you power journal. Because if you do this, this can help change your life. It can change and rewire your brain and your thinking from being negative or hard on yourself to being grateful and realizing how wonderful life is. And even on the worst day you have, there's at least 3 things that you can be grateful for every day. And once you focus on the gratitude, that's where your passion leaves. And again, let me tie this back to our samurai warrior, Machiko. Remember, she talked about mindfulness. So see how this power of gratitude and mindfulness connects. What you focus on is where your path will lead. So being inspirational, being mindful relates directly to having gratitude. So again, I want to highlight an amazing space leader who demonstrates gratitude, and that's Dr. Catherine Nakalimbi, who is holding the African Food Prize that she won in 2020. And what she does is she is out of the University of Maryland, and she administers the NASA Harvest Funds, which helps farmers and around the world increase their harvest. But especially, she run this award for helping farmers in Africa. And she is originally from Africa, and she studied abroad because she wanted to learn as much as she could to go back and pay it forward and help people in Africa and apply it there. So again, gratitude. She went into this not for herself, but how she was going to help and serve others. So as we think about that gratefulness and that gratitude, we can see some of the skills that we can develop with time, emotional intelligence, recognizing and appreciating others, having that humility, being a servant leader, having empathy. So I did want to highlight one amazing grateful leader that I know, Sejo Budhalia, and she's from India, and she's also part of the Space Generation Advisory Council, and I think many of you are familiar with SGAC, and I wanted to highlight SGAC as a wonderful organization to join and participate with. But she's still in college, just completing her or just starting her master's. She just got accepted into her master's program. She works in the aerospace industry. But even as a young woman, she is a young woman, but even younger, she started a nonprofit. She reached out to children who were prison inmates. She created patents. I mean, she is an example of it doesn't matter where you are in your journey, you can give back and be grateful throughout the process. And so I think she's a great role model for all of us to look to and emulate and start a nonprofit to help others and pay it forward at a young age. And we can see some of those grateful leaders. Obviously, Oprah Winfrey is very philanthropic, and Indra Nooyi, the former CEO of PepsiCo. So again, as we kind of wrap this up, I wanted to highlight again those three traits that are really needed to be a global transformational leader. You're inspirational, you're authentic, and you have gratitude. So what I'll do now is I want to take the slides down so that I can see people who are on the call as well as people in the room. And what I can do, Josh, is I'm happy to we can do some Q&A, or we could pivot and I can talk a little bit about my journey and some of the lessons I've learned. So I'm kind of real flexible with what you think might be most helpful.
Everyone on the sides, can you move over here so Shelly can see you? If you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand.
Well, first of all, let me ask your feedback. So this is a presentation I've created over time with some interviews from some great people. I'd love to hear your feedback. What did you think of this? Do you think it was helpful, or are there ways I can improve?
I think it was a great presentation. We have a lot of current and future leaders in the room right now. We have Luke from Next Level Devils. He created something called the Space Coalition, which is a coalition of all the space clubs within ASU.
Fantastic. I love it. Kylie, I've seen your hand go up and I see you coming on the screen. I'd love to hear your question or your thoughts.
Can you hear me, first of all? Just making sure.
I can hear
Okay,
you. Thank
awesome.
you.
Nice to meet you, Shelly. I'm Kylie. I am the VP of Networking and Communications for the Space Business Association. For feedback, I thought the presentation was great. I loved all the quotes and all the passion you put into it. For us, my question for you is on the business side of things. How important are corporate and business lawyers in the space industry for you guys?
Well, I think that's really great to highlight the careers in the space industry. So, Kylie, thank you for asking that. A lot of times people don't think about lawyers when we think about the space industry, right? We're thinking about astronauts and rocket scientists. We're thinking about being, entrepreneurs or investors, but there are a diversity of careers. And so, absolutely, we need corporate lawyers. The Space Foundation, we have corporate lawyers, right? So, as you look at all these entrepreneurs and space companies that are out there. I mean, even think of our traditional companies, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, uh, SpaceX, they all have corporate lawyers. They all have attorneys. And And they specialize in IP and HR and litigation and all the normal things that corporate lawyers specialize in. Because when you're a company, doesn't matter if you're a space company, you need corporate lawyers, you need that expertise. And we also need space lawyers. And space lawyers are going to look at different aspects, such as treaties. How do we work better together? What does property rights on the moon look like? Or what happens when two citizens from planet Earth conceive a child in outer space? What nationality is it? What does that mean? And so there's all kinds of things that space lawyers are looking at differently than corporate lawyers. So Kylie, if that's what you want to be as a corporate lawyer and you want to be in the space industry, I assure you, you will have a fantastic opportunity. And I think, you can pick up some classes to really understand maybe some of the nuances about the space business. But again, space business has HR and finance and all the other laws that are governed in the US as well as international policy and trade. So you have a great opportunity for a wonderful career ahead.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yes, I see a hand going up.
Hi, Shelly. My name is Jiva, and I have a question for you regarding women in leadership because I noticed you presented a lot of the quotes were from a lot of them were from women leaders. So over the decades, representation of the female gender in the workplace has significantly increased. But what, according to you, is one challenge that women still face in the workplace, whereas the space industry or some other industry?
So I am going to say I can barely hear you, so I don't know if it's possible for you to come closer to the mic, or if Josh, if you're close to the mic, if maybe you could relay the question for us, because I'm not sure if the other people on the Zoom are able to hear it either.
The question was, what was one challenge women still face
In the workplace,
in the workplace
as leaders.
as leaders?
Great. I'm not even going to say as leaders. I think I shared with you the G100. So check it out, G100, Space Technology and Aviation Wing. You can join me. You could be the Arizona lead if that's what you want. But one of the challenges is obviously the reason G100 exists is for women to have equality by 2030, and that can start with pay. And we still see a pay disparity between women and male colleagues. And that is something that, I think there are a number of organizations and there are a number of states and laws that are looking to change that. For instance, here in Colorado, one of the things they do is you now have to disclose the salary range when you put out a job announcement, because now transparency now ensures that there's pay equity. So I'm going to say, whether you're a woman that's a space leader or just a woman, it's important to understand that you need to negotiate your salary. And it starts as early as that first job out of college, because what happens is women may not be as comfortable at negotiating as males are. And so if that first salary coming out of college is low, then even if they get pay increases, they're still potentially lower than their male colleagues. So again, I think one of the things you're going to have to look at is gender pay quality, pay equity. And again, I think it starts with you finding some classes. I know like Women in Aerospace, which is a great organization that's out of DC, offer some wonderful programs on negotiating for women. So maybe there's some programs there at ASU or in the community, even with maybe the women's chamber or something, that talk about helping women understand how to negotiate, especially for salaries, because we all feel a little awkward when we're negotiating and asking for more. So I hope that kind of answered your question. And I hope that gave you maybe an action item on how you could, make sure you're ready for that first salary negotiation you're going to have. Okay, we got a comment from Victoria. Thank you so much. Victoria, in case the people in the room can't read the screen, she's you're inspiring to me as a woman going in the space industry. Thank you for your positive message and for coming to speak with us again. Well, Victoria, you're very welcome. If you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat. What I'm going to do is, if there's no other questions, I can kind of talk a little bit about some of the space industry and how it's changed over 60 years. Josh, if that seems like that.
We have one more question in the room.
Okay.
Oh, what is your question? I think this mic works.
Um, in your presentation, you talked about how Kay believes in being action driven. So as a woman leader, I've interviewed people and women leaders, and they've said that they face a lot of skepticism by people when they say that they're leaders. How can a woman tackle that in order to execute their plans?
So I apologize. I could barely hear you. I'm not sure all of us on the Zoom could hear you. So maybe that mic's not working that well. Sorry, Josh. You're getting your steps in tonight. I hope you're wearing your Fitbit.
So the question was about skepticism as a woman leader.
Skepticism towards women leaders?
Yes.
Or-
So as a woman leader, women face a lot of skepticism in the workplace. How can you tackle that and be more action driven?
So I think I got the gist. How do you handle that? And what are some things? Well, first of all, for all the skeptics out there who think I can't do it, watch me. So I think you have to, again, have that. Remember, we talked about global transformational leadership, having that positive mental attitude. Yeah, sure. There's always going to be, the critic, the person in the arena who's doing the day to day, who's handling it. And there's a great quote from Teddy Roosevelt about the man in the arena, but this time the woman in the arena. So you've got to steel yourself to have that positive mental attitude. But I think it's really important for everyone, not just women and men, but to specifically answer your question about concerns, you need to build your group. You need to build your supporters. And men seem to have an easier time building networks than women, right? I mean, I can look at male colleagues, maybe they go play golf or they do some activities together that women need to find that kind of connective tissue. And I will say, women are sometimes not as good at networking. And so let me give you an example of why this is so important. When I was still in the Air Force, I had just moved to Washington, D.C. I was working in the Pentagon, and a nonprofit organization called the Air Force Association was going to do a special honor for the Air Force officers that were in the acquisition profession. So that meant that I worked on, satellites and launch vehicles and the procurement pipeline of purchasing those systems for the Air Force. Nobody in my office wanted to go. It was after work and everybody just wanted to go home. And I was new. I didn't know anybody. And I could have easily gone home too. But instead I said, you know what? I'm going to go to this event. First of all, I was at Ruth Chris, so it's great food, right? Scallops wrapped with bacon, So first of all, great opportunity to have a nice snack. And I didn't know anybody, but I did walk around the room and I met some people that I knew, and then I said hello to people I didn't know, and then I saw him, the Godfather. So let me tell you who the Godfather is. The Godfather was a very high-ranking official in Air Force procurement. And I had the fortunate opportunity to volunteer to be his executive assistant for 2 weeks while his regular exec was on vacation. And let me tell you what volunteering meant. It meant I worked 12-hour days. It meant I was in the office before he came in and I was in the office after he left. But it gave me the opportunity to learn and have that 2 weeks of exposure to him and him to get to know me as a person. So here he was now, the Godfather, at this reception. So I made my way over to him and he's like, Brunswick, what are you doing? And, I was looking for a new job in the Pentagon at that time, working for him still, but in a different division. And he was talking to a gentleman in civilian clothes, not in a military uniform, who was telling him he had just got picked up for command and that he was going to be leaving his job working in the Senate on behalf of the Godfather and the U.S. Air Force. Here was a military service member in civilian clothes working in the Senate on behalf of the U.S. Air Force. I didn't even know this kind of job exists. And the Godfather looked at this guy who just told him, I'm leaving, you need to find a replacement. And he looked at me and he said, Brunswick, how would you like to be a legislative liaison? Now I'm going to highlight, he didn't give me the job. People are like, oh, you got the job. It didn't quite work out that way. I got an opportunity to interview for the job and then I got the job. But what I highlight is Sometimes it's really hard to get out from behind your desk. Sometimes it's hard to put yourself out there and go network with people. Sometimes you got to raise your hand and volunteer for the hard job and work the 12-hour days, so that people know you beyond just sitting behind your desk. And I do think sometimes women have a harder time of doing that. So there could be skepticism, but I'm also going to say, how do you overcome that? You volunteer for the hard project. You get out from behind your desk. You network. You join organizations like Women Tech Network or Women in Aerospace or the Women's Chamber or, the Speakers Bureau or, Space Business Association, right? You join these organizations. So when you have a bad day, when someone gives you a load of BS, you go to your tribe that's in that room with you right now and you say, man, I had a bad day. And you know what they're going to tell you to do, right? You're going to go back to the slides I showed you. You know what? What are 3 things you're grateful for today? And the first one is probably those people you're talking to, the people who are supporting you. And first of all, that's going to make you feel better. And the second thing is tomorrow's a new day. And the third thing is, you know what? You're going to show that person that you're going to overcome their skepticism. So lean back into that global transformational leadership. Remember to be grateful. Remember to also volunteer for the hard projects. Build your network and get out from behind your desk. So I hope those are some real tangible actions that could be helpful. And again, there are crappy days. I have crappy days. Everybody has crappy days. But it's how do you want to deal with them? And how do you want to rise to the challenge? Because just like Admiral McRaven said, the only easy day was yesterday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I actually have a question. Going from the Air Force to being like the CEO of the Space Foundation, your workload changed like so much, doing like 2 different things. How did you like switch your mindset from going to Air Force to the COO of Space Foundation?
That's a really great question because a lot of people, we all say support the military, support their transition, but it is a transition. The military is a very homogeneous group of individuals. And so when you make that transition, especially after 29 years like I did, you have to reevaluate how you want to engage with people. Now, I will say I was a little bit fortunate because remember, I worked in Air Force acquisition doing space procurement. So I worked with a lot of defense contractors like Boeing and Lockheed. So I got to interact with a lot of people outside the Air Force. And then I worked on Capitol Hill. So I got to work with all these high performers who really wanted to do what was best for our nation. So again, I was able to not be completely isolated in an Air Force homogeneous environment with a lot of like-minded thinkers. But it is about being a good leader. And a lot of that requires you, and these are skills for everyone. You have to listen, learn, and lead. And the first thing I had to do when I became the COO is I had to listen to the people that were actually at the Space Foundation doing the job. What do you do? What's the impact? How can I help you? So it's listening, but also asking really good questions. So being a good leader is also about being able to ask questions that probe and get information from people, to share information so that you understand what they're doing and how the picture works. So you got to listen, and then you're going to learn what's happening, right? You're going to process it. You don't just listen to somebody and then you take action. You process it, you marinate it. I walk on the treadmill a lot. And then you're ready to lead. Then you're ready to say, I've got some ideas. What do you think of them? What if we tried this? So it's not coming in there with, I got all the right answers and you don't know what you're doing, or the military did it different. It's coming in, listening, and being respectful of the people who are in the position. And I think that's not just for transitioning from the military to civilian life. I think that's transitioning any juncture. When you transition from freshman to junior to senior, and then that first job or that internship, you need to kind of think about listening, right? Listening to, if you get a fellowship, listening to your mentors, listening to your boss, asking questions. What could I do? How could I help you better? And then learning from that experience and then being able to take that experience and be a leader. So that's just one kind of idea of transitioning. Now, I will say it is nice making the transition from the military to the civilian world, because in the military, you're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's nice that I'm not on call 24 hours a day. I still work 7 days a week. And I'm sure many of the colleagues like David Thomas who are joining us tonight know that feeling. But I'm working beyond my 8 hours a day because I'm passionate about what I do at Space Foundation. I'm passionate about making a difference. And so I'm not working 24 hours, 7 days a week because it's the mission of the military. I'm working those hours. I'm meeting you tonight because I want to be here. I want to connect with you and I want to share and hopefully inspire you to be the future leaders in the space industry. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I had a question, kind of that last bit that you talked about ties into pretty well. For someone like me has been a leader here at ASU, but I'm about to graduate and go into essentially the bottom rung. Do you have any tips on how to, still be a leader, not only just in a job, but like finding other things to do, joining some kind of organization like yours outside of, work and balancing all of that?
Well, that's a great question. And remember, you're not on the bottom rung. I don't think that's the proper analogy to look at. I think you need to look at it that you're on a journey, right? I'm on a journey myself. My first chapter was being an enlisted airman. My second chapter was being an officer in the Air Force. I'm now on my third chapter. I don't know what the fourth chapter is going to be, but I'm open, right? And so I think, first of all, reframe that from you're graduating. That's awesome. Hopefully, you've built your resume, you're getting that first wonderful opportunity. And you know what's so great about this point in your career? There's so many options. You know what you get to do at this point? You get to try something, and if you don't like it, try something else. And so at this point in your life, don't look at it as the bottom of the rung. Look at it as an opportunity to experience a lot of options and to learn a lot. And sometimes you may have good leaders or bad leaders, but the other thing you can look at is when, I've learned just as much from leaders who were not great leaders as I have from great leaders, right? I'm not going to put the pictures up of the leaders who I learned a lot from because they were not great leaders. What they taught me was not to do that, right? So you're going to learn a lot at this phase. You're going to get to ask a lot of questions. You're going to build your resume and you're going to figure out where you really want to have an impact. So look at it as this is a great opportunity. And then, like you said, I think volunteering and finding something that ignites you. I mean, hopefully you're getting a job you're excited about, but then I think you should absolutely find some things that you're passionate about. Maybe you come back and be a mentor for Space Business Association, or you be a mentor for another organization, or you participate in Toastmasters, or I think absolutely. I will tell you, I'm a joiner. I've discovered that over my career that I'm a joiner. I've always been a joiner. Even in high school, I joined debate, I joined track, I joined tennis. I was a joiner. And here I am. If you look at my LinkedIn, you're probably like, okay, you got Space Foundation, but then you got Forbes and you got G100 and you got World Business Angels Investment Forum and you got. So what I've learned is I am a joiner because my work does bring me great satisfaction and fulfillment. I believe in the mission that we're doing at Space Foundation, but I also want to give back in a bigger way. It's part of that military service before self culture. So I join organizations and I do things outside of work on the weekends. And, right now I'm working on a book project that give me great satisfaction that I'm contributing and having an impact. So I think go back to the charts we talked about with the samurai warrior, where she said mindfulness. So that first job, what do you really want to get out of that job? Like go into this, like, what is your goal for this first job? Okay, it's the bottom rung, but that's not okay. That's where you're starting, but where do you want to be next? I mean, and maybe it's not all up one ladder. Maybe you're going to start here and then you're going to swing over to this ladder and you're going to swing over to that ladder because you eventually want to accomplish something higher up. So be mindful. Where do you want to be in 3, 5, 10 years? This is just the first step to get you there. And so I would also say that. And these organizations you join outside of work, do they help you accomplish what you want to accomplish? Do they have that impact, or do they just bring you great joy? Not everything you do in life has to be to have an impact. It can also just be something that brings you great joy. So did that kind of help answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Awesome.
I have a question for you.
Absolutely, Savannah. We'd love to hear it.
So first off, it's great to meet you. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the SBA, and it's just been, like Victoria and everyone else has already said, it's been super inspirational to hear everything you've said. I wanted to ask you, and I apologize if this is redundant, I missed the first couple minutes of the meeting, but I wanted to ask about your time in the Air Force. And I wanted to ask first off, it's kind of a two-parter. Do you think that you could have gotten to where you are in your career today, or have generally just become the kind of person that you are now without that experience? And also, how was that experience as a woman?
Okay, great questions. So first of all, I could not have gotten where I am today had I not been in the military. And this is why. I didn't go over my whole journey, and we can talk about that. But so I'm significantly older than you are, more than 25 years in the space industry. And the only way you could be in the space industry 25 years ago is you were either civil space, so you worked at NASA, or you were in the military, or you worked at a large space, defense contractor like a Lockheed Martin, right? So it was very traditional, and there was only a few ways to get into the space industry. So I could not be where I am today had my journey not brought me here. Now, what I will say is when I originally joined the Air Force, I was enlisted. So I joined right out of high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't have college money. And the Air Force was a great opportunity to learn a skill set, earn some college money, see the world. But what I did is I went to school at night. And by doing that, I earned my bachelor's and master's degrees. But here's where I'm not a traditional space person. So yes, I came in the traditional way into the space industry because I was in the military, but the non-traditional piece is I do not have a STEM degree. So I'm not science, technology, engineering, mathematics. I have a business degree. You're my people. You're my tribe. You're where I belong. However, that's not exactly what the Air Force wanted the first time I applied to become an officer. What they wanted was a STEM professional. So the first time I applied to become an officer in the Air Force, I was not selected. Thank you for applying, but I didn't give up. See, so failure's okay. That's why I kind of leaned back. I didn't get your name, the one who, the gentleman in the back who talked about being on the bottom rung. Failure's okay. I didn't get it the first time, but I didn't give up. I reapplied. I redid my application. I redid my letters. And the second time I applied, I got accepted. And I got accepted to be this acquisition officer, which I'm like, I have no idea what this is because I was a personnel specialist. I was an HR person when I was enlisted. So for anybody in there who talks about HR or HR law, I totally get you. So I started this acquisition journey, and I was stationed out in LA at the Space Systems Command. And that's what started my 25-year journey. So I could not be where I am today had I not come in through the Air Force pipeline, because you could only come into the space industry that way. That's not true today. And I am the start, I would say, of bringing in non-traditional backgrounds into the space industry, being that I have a business background versus a STEM profession. So that I would say was even the start of diversifying the careers now in the space industry. So I kind of wanted to share that, Savannah. I hope that kind of shared a little bit. Yeah, I wouldn't be where I am today had it not been. So I don't regret anything in life, if that's what you want to know. The goods and the bads. About being a woman, well, in basic training and officer training school, I had hair and the men did not. So you get picked out a lot more. When there's only like 2 or 3 women, you stand out a lot more. So we stood out a lot more. But I would say, I'm wearing the uniform just like anybody else. I'm sitting at the table just like anybody else. And go back to what I shared, listen, learn, and lead. I did that even back then. The Air Force was really wonderful in creating leaders, because they send you to leadership training. See, they didn't send me to specialist training. They didn't send me to be a subject matter expert. They did that. But then throughout my career, they sent me to leadership training. And that's what I want to impart on you. You're going to be subject matter experts. And that's great. As the gentleman in the back said, when you start your career at the bottom rung, you need to be an expert. You need to dig in. You need to really know that. But as you rise up the ladder, being that subject matter expert becomes less important, and the leadership skills become more important. And so I'm fortunate the Air Force provided those leadership training along the way. And do I feel discrimination or anything from the Air Force? I do not. I think it was a great opportunity. I loved it. I missed the camaraderie of being in the military. You know, there is a thing about, you know, being part of, you know, an organization like the Air Force, integrity, service before self, excellence in all we do, you know, having values. But I love where I am now too at Space Foundation. We have a great team. We have values, you know, our values are team, trust and excellence. And I encourage you, Savannah, as well as everybody here. What are your values? What are your personal values that you live by every day that are your guiding star for where you want to be? And so I think it's important that you know what your values are. It goes back to that mindfulness from Machiko, the samurai warrior. The mindfulness of where I want to be, what are my values, and I want to align those with other people in other organizations where I want to work. So I hope, Savannah, that may have not been exactly your question, but I hope that kind of was helpful.
No, that was perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. Very insightful.
You're welcome. And I do know I'm getting a notice every so often that I have internet is unstable. So if I cut out, please let me know. You know, it's just how it is some days.
Looks like we have a question in the room.
Just let me know if you can't hear me. My name is Lydia Procopio. It's so nice to meet you, and I'm very grateful that I got to attend this presentation. It was very enlightening. I too am a joiner. I love to get involved with as much as I can. So my question is, what is your advice for balancing everything that you're joining with your personal life?
So I'm going to start this with a note my husband has put on the door that goes out to our garage. And the note says, when you say yes to others, you may be saying no to yourself. So I think being a joiner and being passionate about things and creating that network is wonderful. But I think you also have to balance that with your self-care and taking care of yourself and your family and your needs. And how do you want to have an impact? And so what I mean by that is I'm going to give you $20 in $1 bills, and there are 20 charities, and you could give $1 to every charity. Same amount, $20, but you gave $1 to every charity, not a huge impact. Or you could give $20 to one charity and you could have a bigger impact. So I think as you look at what are the things you're doing, are you ensuring that you're taking care of yourself? So my husband was a firefighter. So I'm going to give you that, you know, you need to take care of yourself first. You know, just like on the plane, you know, you got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help others. Just like my husband was a firefighter, he had to make sure his equipment worked first before he could rescue anyone. So you need to take care of yourself first, eating right, exercising, you know, doing the gratitude journal, being mindful, because mindfulness means you have to be by yourself. I'm an extrovert, in case you don't notice. I love being with people. I could be with people all the time. I get energy from people. Being mindful means though you have to quiet your mind and quiet your thoughts and really focus on where do you want to be. So you need to really, this is part of that emotional intelligence piece of that global transformational leader, that gratitude. Emotional intelligence, that first piece is really understanding yourself. And that means being mindful, really understanding. And then you can determine the impact you want and then the contribution. So, you know, do you want to give $1 to 20 charities or $20 to one or $5 to four. So that's a personal choice you have to make, and know that and again, I sometimes overextend myself and think, what am I doing? And then you have to kind of dial it back and say, you know, I need to dial it back. So this is about self-care, self-monitoring, being mindful, and then that emotional intelligence, really understanding yourself. Because if you know you over contribute or overjoin, then you need to be mindful not to do that. Does that kind of help answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. And I know we're kind of rolling on an hour, Josh. It went so fast. I didn't even get to talk about other things, and I'm happy to stay if there's other questions for y'all, or I know you might have some business. And Matt, thank you for your comment. You would not change your socks if the Air Force recalled you. So awesome. I feel the same way. Actually, now the Space Force didn't exist. You know, I would have been in space acquisition had the Space Force existed. So maybe there's, you know, a future opportunity. Space Force, but probably not. Probably I'm pretty happy doing what I do now, which is I really feel at Space Foundation and working in a nonprofit arena, I'm able to give back larger and in a larger way than I did when I was on active duty. You know, it's a different way of serving. And so I still consider I'm serving. I'm just serving in a different way. And instead of just serving the United States, which I love doing, I'm also serving individuals around the world that are part of the global space ecosystem. You know, there's more than 92 countries operating in space. I don't know if any of you are going to get the opportunity to go to the International Astronautical Congress, but that is an awesome event. So someday maybe you can participate in that event as a member of a Space Generation Advisory Council. So I just kind of throw some of those thoughts out there as you're doing that mindfulness and what is the impact and where do you want to be?
So I'm gonna open the floor up to any final questions before I go into closing comments. Anyone on Zoom, raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, great. Thank you, Shelli. If you're looking for more Shelli Brunswick, I posted all of her social medias, her YouTube, and all of the relevant links in the Discord under the broadcast channel. I think there was a very appropriate talk for the first meeting of the Space Business Association. There's a lot of student leaders here today, and the Space Business Association's e-board is actually a majority woman. So that's great. So I want to thank you again, Shelli, and go into some upcoming events you guys should put on your calendars. So we have another Women in Space leader coming in 2 weeks. We host speaker events bi-weekly. That's Ruth Oka. She is the CTO of a Nigerian satellite company called Sigicoms, also the founder and CEO of Space Boss, encouraging African youth to get into the aerospace industry. That's going to be an amazing talk. You won't want to miss it. Also hosted on Zoom. And on October 5th, we're having the CEO of Catalyst Space come in person for an event here at the SBA. We're partnered with DECA, the professional leadership club here at ASU. For that event, we'll have free food there, free Chipotle. We'll have free stuff there, and he will be in person. So that's going to be great. So keep that on your calendars and look out for more SBA stuff under the broadcast channel. Thank you, Shelli. TJ, can you stop recording?
Thank you. See you around the galaxy.